Well, good evening and welcome once again to the Monday Review Show. We are now going out, as I mentioned last week, at 8 p.m. on a Monday night instead of 7 p.m. 7 p.m. seems a little bit tight for a number of reasons. So we decided to put it back to 8 o'clock to make it easier. That's 8 o'clock UK or even Irish time. So hope you get used to the idea after a while. Good evening again and welcome. As I said, just remember we are on Facebook, we're also on Twitter, and we're also on YouTube. Now, I'm just waiting for my very good friend and colleague, Keith Hackett, to make contact with me. I'm not sure what the problem is, but I'm sure he'll be along very shortly. A reminder also that if you'd like to send in your questions or comments, or you'd like to ask a question, or you've something to say about the show, please do so in the appropriate manner. There's a little thing down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and you just swipe across there and make your comment and ask your question, whatever it may be. But at all times, as usual, please be respectful of the show, be respectful of my guest particularly, and try not to say anything that may be considered to be in any way defamatory or insulting or rude to anybody or anyone. Now, my guest, as I said, is Keith Hackett. I'm just waiting on him to make contact. But in the past week, as you will have seen or read or heard, there's been quite a few red cards given out. And you'd say, well, so what? That happens in a game. But in this instance, it's mainly to managers and coaches. And there was another 2 red cards dished out on this weekend as well to the acting manager of Tottenham Hotspur and the manager of Brighton. Now, it seemed that there was something going on between them before the game, and I'm not even going to go into that or even speculate as to what it might have been that caused that friction, but there certainly was some friction between them, culminating in both of them getting a red card from the referee. Now, this is a new practice in officiating. Normally, red cards were only given to the players on the field of play. Now they can be given to the managers and the coaches, any of the technical staff, and the substituted players or players who have not been substituted. So anybody effectively within the technical area can now get a red card, which they could not in the past. And they, whatever was said or whatever was uttered, I don't know. The fourth official reported it to the referee, and he came over and he dished out red cards. And fine, I have no problem with that. You'll also remember a couple of weeks ago there was an incident where Mitrovic of Fulham actually put his hand on the referee and waved his finger in his face, and he was reported to the FA. He got a red card, of course, but then the FA increased the normal straight red card. Remember, is 3 games, automatic 3 games. If it's a second yellow card for which a red card is issued, then he gets 1 match ban. But if it's a straight red card, it's a minimum of 3 games. Now, the FA looked at this and they found that the abuse of the referee was such that it required further punishment. My colleague, Keith Hackett, was suggesting that perhaps the player should have got more, should have got 11, 12 games because of what he did. Because you cannot behave like that and expect to get away with it. You cannot expect to mistreat, abuse physically or verbally or both sometimes a match official and expect to get away with it scot-free. Any kind of physical attack, and it's happening so much, and we have discussed it as well, any kind of physical attack by a player or a team official or anybody on the bench, on a referee, in any game, should get the severest punishment available to the authorities. Severest. Now, of course, a lot will have to do with the the referee's report, what he writes in the report, what was said to him, and what action was taken, was perpetrated against the match official for him to issue that red card. So a straight red card is for a foul, dangerous play, violent conduct, effectively, and that's a straight red card, and that's 3 games. But if that's added to by insult, sometimes even injury, and you've seen cases where referees have been physically assaulted, and in fact, I think I'll just show you one now, and you may have seen this before. I mean, just appalling behavior. And this was, again, and sorry to Daniel Sweeney, my namesake, no relation, who here in Ireland was so physically assaulted that he ended up like this. I mean, that is appalling behavior. And I showed it last week, and I showed, I think, this also last week, but this was a female referee was attacked in Pakistan. You see the blood coming down from behind her ear there? So any kind of violence perpetrated against a match official has to be condemned in the strongest possible terms. Strongest possible terms, and dealt with accordingly. Because you're out there on your own. You're doing a game. Sometimes, and I've done them, and many referees have done them, you've refereed games where there was where you were acting on your own. You didn't have assistant referees, or linesmen as they used to call them. You didn't have fourth officials. You didn't have VAR. You didn't have any protection. You went along to a Sunday morning game or a Saturday afternoon game, way out in the middle of nowhere, and you were there to referee. And you were effectively at the mercy of these 22 players. And you were hoping, and sometimes hoping against hope, that they would behave themselves and that they would accept your decisions. Because Law 5 clearly states that players not only must respect the referee, they must accept the decisions of the referee. Now, I know you'll say, yeah, but this guy did this and that guy did that, and this guy was corrupt and he took money and blah, blah. Prove it. If you have the evidence, prove it. Bring it to the authorities. If you think that a referee took money and you can prove it, by all means, expose them, and let's get rid of those guys. Let's ban them from the game. Let's get them out of refereeing altogether, and in fact, away from football. Absolutely. And there have been instances where referees have taken money. And we know that. And there are, without being boring and repetitive and mentioning it again, there was the game in South Africa where it was a World Cup qualifier between South Africa and can't remember the name of the other team, but the referee was found to have taken money to influence a decision, and he was subsequently banned, and that's perfectly all right. I have absolutely no problem with that. Absolutely no problem. But on the opposite side, players cannot take liberties with referees, and they are doing it time after time after time. Diving, cheating, blatantly cheating, trying to get their fellow professionals sent off, which makes it total nonsense of the shake hands at the start of the game. If I was in charge of referees, I would not entertain it whatsoever. If they want to shake hands, go ahead, shake hands. Don't shake hands with me. I don't want to shake hands with you. I want to go out there and do my job to the best of my ability without any fear of backlash or influence or whatever against me. If you want to shake hands with your colleagues, go ahead. But do you see the hypocrisy of it? Because the game has no sooner started than they're at each other. They're kicking each other up in the air. They're trying to get them sent off. They're trying to get them at least yellow carded. They're diving. They're cheating. They're looking for penalties. They're looking for free kicks. They're even appealing throw-ins. So where's the handshake? Where does that come in? And where is the whole thing about the respect and sportsmanship? Where's that? That goes out the window. So it's a total hypocrisy. If I was in charge of referees in a league, I would say to them, do not come and shake hands with my referees. Shake hands with your opposition numbers if you want to, with your teammates. Go ahead, do that. No problem. Don't shake hands with my referees and then 2 minutes later be in their face, pointing your finger, shouting and screaming at them because you didn't get a free kick or you thought you should have got a penalty kick. Where's the respect? There is no respect. So just stay away from me. I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability. You do your job to the best of your ability, and we'll see how we get on. Now, I mentioned the red card to the managers in the Spurs Brighton game, but then there was another incident which is exercising on an awful lot of people this last weekend in the game between Liverpool and Arsenal, where it appeared that the assistant referee had raised his elbow up against Liverpool's Andy Robertson. Not sure what it was. Pictures are not very good. We don't have a clear close-up picture. Some TV stations have tried to highlight the situation, but doesn't come across very well. And I'm delighted to tell you that now I've just made contact with Keith Hackett. Good evening, Keith.
Good evening, Errol. I was having some problems with my email.
Okay. I just carried on, soldiered on. And anyway, great to have you. Thanks again, Keith, for
Pleasure.
Yeah. I was just talking, Keith, about the red cards, of course, in the Spurs Brighton game. We'll come to the Liverpool incident in a moment with the assistant referee and Liverpool's Andy Robertson. There's more red cards being dished out now to team officials than there is to players. What's going on?
Well, I suspect that Howard Webb has had a think about what's happening in the technical area. Obviously, we've seen fines being handed out and suspensions being handed out to managers. And it's an area that needs to be gripped. What was interesting was the Tottenham coach manager getting a red card. And somebody said to me, well, he didn't appear to be saying or doing anything when he received that red card. Of course, that's right. If the referee can't identify, then it's the guy who's at the top of the pile that gets the red card. I mean, it's a mess, isn't it? I mean, the lawmakers here have allowed the number of occupants of the technical area to grow beyond what is effectively manageable size. The fourth official has got a job to do. He's there to support the referee, not manage the children, because that's how they behave.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And I just think that there needs to be a review in terms of how many can sit in the area, because you've got increased number of substitutes, you've got technical staff that are support mechanisms, coaching, fitness, you've then got the medical side, the doctor, and you look at it and think it's all a bit of a mess, because when a goal is scored, they're all dancing around, and the other team who've had a goal against them are annoyed. And so it's fuel to a fire that creates this problem. And the poor old fourth official who's trying to do his job, he's not there to be the schoolmaster controlling the children. I mean, if they behave like adults, then it's not a problem. But they don't.
So going back then, Keith, you remember there was a directive, an instruction, whatever, sent out that everybody must be seated. And that if coach wanted to get up, he would come to the edge of the area, his technical area, give his instructions, and go back to his seat.
Yeah.
And then the one who started flouting that, as far as I can remember, was actually Kenny Dalglish, who refused to sit down, but stood by the technical area covering and was leaning against it.
Correct.
And then suddenly it's been gradually eroded, if you like, that they're now not only on the edge of the technical area, they're on the edge of the pitch. And as in Jose Mourinho's case, was way down the touch, sliding with his knees. I mean, just ridiculous. But isn't it, Keith, then, isn't it our fault as referees that we're not enforcing this, that we're allowing this directive to be eroded to such an extent that it's just chaos now in the technical area.
Yeah, I think that part of that is what we're actually seeing is we're seeing things happening in the game, and then the law makers, instead of holding the line in the sand and saying to match officials, you've got to do something about it, this is what we expect you to do, they move the goalposts towards the scenario. Remember the days we talked about it a week ago where Sepp Blatter was quite insistent that nobody could be treated on the field of play. Yeah. That in itself might have been a ridiculous state of affairs, particularly if the player is seriously injured. But we got on with the game. Now, I mean, today I watched a game in the championship, and the player decides that he wants to tie his bootlaces, and he sits across the touchline, and the game's held up whilst he's allowed to do it. Don't they understand that the law is quite specific on that? If you want to, move off the field of play, if you want to change your boots, do them, and then there's a process coming back. But I don't want to be the policeman that fires everybody at 30 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I want a little bit of tolerance, but the tolerance has gone too far. And I suggest that we've got referees who are being over tolerant. I think when we look at this light touch, we've heard this view, haven't we, of the lighter touch being applied by match officials. That's a watering down of the laws of the game. However you look at it, and you suddenly go, why are referees allowing this to happen? One can only assume is that are the paymasters of professional referees dictating how the law should be applied, rather than the referee body like the Football Association, who should be saying, look, Mr. PGMOL, how you're applying this law is unacceptable. And as a consequence of that, we don't have VAR representatives at European Championship finals, World Cups, because we're not doing that job as well as we should do. And I think, when we look at players surrounding the referee, eroding the authority of the match official, that's what they're doing, cheating.
Yeah.
When we actually look at a fine of £1 million so far collected for various clubs failing to control the players, it's having no impact. Money is not a problem. Therefore, why doesn't somebody in authority say, look, the only way we're going to resolve this issue is to start deducting points? And if that has to start at the grassroots end of the game and move upwards in experimental format, then do it. Let's try to get the referees to win back control. Because I think
I think what you said there, Keith, money is not a problem. I think money is the problem, and there's such a need, a desire to win, sometimes at all costs, and if that means cheating and diving to do it, then so be it. It's the winning mentality, and you're 100% right when you say money is not the solution, and money is part of the problem. But the real solution, as you say, is to start deducting points. And that will give them a good kick up the backside, because that point or 2 points or 3 points, wherever it is in a season, could be the difference between them winning the Premier League or being relegated or not relegated or promoted to the net and so on. So maybe deducting points is the real solution to this problem. Yeah.
I thought we had a few years ago the answer to the problem of dissent, and that was, and I'd love to see it introduced, and that is we take the rugby scenario of the advancement of 10 yards. And of course,
I saw that, Keith. Yeah, and that was a great issue. Was
we,
that ever
we,
officially withdrawn, or did it just sort of?
Yeah, no. Well, we introduced it in England, and they allowed the experiment, and it was very successful. Then they decided we will adopt this law only on the proviso that before you advance the ball 10 yards, you have to caution somebody. And so as a consequence, it suddenly you saw a weakening of resolve by the match official to apply it, because he had to caution somebody. And so as a result, it then got lost in the malaise. Whereas it was simple in its introductory year of, you're having a go at me, I'm advancing 10 yards. And, these things have been tried. One begins to worry about the strength of referee bodies. And by that, I also include the Football Association, to ensure that the game is effectively takes place within the laws of the game, within the remit that they operate. I mean, let's just take the Mitrovic and we just revisit it, because they've handed out a punishment. Well, he was sent off for effectively violent conduct, which is 3-match ban. Then for the second offence of laying his hands on the referee or threatening the referee, he was punished a further 5 games. So in total, he's banned for 8 matches. The FA have appealed that decision. The FA, not the PGMOL, not the club. The Football Association is saying it's not, the fine is not good enough. So if you create a committee, which is in effect a disciplinary panel, and that panel is not briefed, and perhaps, the danger I've said before, it's made up of ex-players. And you might have one representative from the PGMOL and one referee. So as a consequence, we look at the game rather than through the eyes of the lawmakers and the actual law and the application of the law, which is really important. We're viewing it through the eyes of players. And we're actually making major decisions on the punishment of players by players. I mean, that's like the guy who breaks into the jail and actually they bring 12 people in from the local prison and say, right, judge him. It's crazy.
The incident with the assistant referee and Andy Robertson of Liverpool, and I'm just going to read out what you said today. You said, this is an unprecedented action by a match official at elite level. The Football Association and the Professional Games Match Officials Limited responded quickly, announcing that the actions of the Liverpool player Robertson and the assistant would be investigated. The assistant was approached by Liverpool's Robinson. The assistant was approached by Liverpool's Robinson, appeared to be held, and the assistant lost his composure. It is so important that match officials, even when faced with a player or players disputing a decision, that they hold their composure. Now, the video evidence is not very clear. It's quite far away, and some of the TV stations have tried to amplify it to show it a bit better.
Yes.
And I've been criticized now because I'm trying to be objective in this, in that the player, the assistant did bring his elbow up, but yes. I'm suggesting, in fairness to the match official, I couldn't see him actually going and elbowing a player in the face in front of TV cameras. I'm just wondering, and I'd like your thoughts on this, is it possible that Robertson had grabbed his arm and he pulled his arm up to get it away? Is that a possibility, or am I being naive?
I think you're right about the quality of the film. There's no doubt it's grainy, and it is from a distance. But we also know that there's 22 cameras at this game. Therefore, are those people that have a clearer view or a clearer picture? Has it been held back? I think that when you actually look at it, the thing that concerned me, and I took that view on the first viewing. I said to the newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, who I write for, that it was almost like I'm swatting the player away with his
That's
arm.
what I got as well. Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, okay, I think the PGMOL and the FA did act very quickly. Almost immediately after the end of the game, they come out and say, we're going to review it. Rightly so. I saw a film clip today on social media that someone sent me. And it's not a squat, it's a lift upwards. And it's that movement, which is pretty quick, which might be, whoa, get off me. Yeah. So I think, and I hope that is the case. I do genuinely hope, for the sake of the assistant referee and the game as a whole, that his reaction wasn't one of reacting against what was happening, but maybe he's had enough and he's taken a bit of action to break loose from the player. And I think what has to happen is, they've got to review the case very clearly. It was interesting. I did an interview today on TalkSport, and they finished up saying, well, you're trying to literally hang a colleague. And what I tried to explain is the process that disciplinary matters on the field of play, as this was, is dealt with by the Football Association through its disciplinary panel, not the PGMOL.
And I was also accused on various outlets as well of defending the match official. And I'm trying to be objective. Well, and if he did wrong, he did wrong, and he needs to face the consequences.
Correct. I then went on to say that if that disciplinary panel find the assistant referee guilty of an offence for which they punish him, then that is when the PGMOL, as his employer, kicks in. And what they will have to do, the PGMOL, is whatever the outcome is, they themselves have now got to review it as his employee, taking the guidance of the outcome of the event at the Football Association. And here lies the problem. If they decide that this warrants suspension, then lies the problem with Howard Webb and the board of directors of the PGMOL, because they will have to review it, I believe, as an act of gross misconduct. If they do that, then this puts the career of this match official in doubt. And this is why I think I don't have an answer to say whether his actions were right or wrong. I highlighted the need for match officials at all times to hold their composure. And what we all will have to do is wait for the outcome. That's not me casting aside. I think that I generally believe that the actions of the assistant referee were unhelpful, because however you act on a field of play, if you're a wise owl, you don't make decisions or take actions that draw the attention to you and put your integrity in doubt. And this is what this incident has done. And this is why I think it's a focal point, why I've been on BBC World and BBC and TalkSport discussing it, because it is a serious event. It has to be dealt with very carefully. And I feel for a colleague. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, this guy has now been suspended, but not suspended. Unofficially, he's been told he's not going to receive any appointments until the outcome of the hearing. I have to say that I'm in agreement with that, because although it seems harsh and we're prejudging the outcome, what you don't want is distraction being created by him turning up at a ground and being involved in a game at the elite level.
Yeah.
And this is the dilemma that the management at the PGMOL face when they have a referee at the center of conflict in terms of the media and in terms of fans. Because
and I agree with you there, Keith. We have to be at all times above reproach and be seen to be above reproach.
Yes.
We're no different than anybody else, and we cannot, in an official capacity where we have it's like a policeman.
Yes,
he's got to behave himself at all times, even though he might feel like hitting out at some guys who are throwing things. He's still got to be, and so referees are the same. And I think maybe we should leave it at that, because there's lots of comments coming on social media. Even Chris Sutton talking about it to be banned. I mean, these are all inflammatory statements from ex-players saying these things. They should also show some restraint and let due process take its place.
And I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm confident that, knowing the process generally of the FA and the PGMOL, it will be handled very sensitively. And the guy will be offered, the guy will be offered support. This, it just doesn't affect the referee. One of the problems, Errol, is that it is likely that he's being hounded at the moment by the media for comment. And I had when Stuart Atwell had that goal that he gave that wasn't a goal because it was a yard past the goal post. I made a phone call and said, "Look, Stuart, I've booked you an hotel, the flights, off you go into Europe, get lost." And then his mum rang and said, "I've got 24 journalists outside and a television van and everything else." And I said, "Just make them a cup of tea, go outside and explain that Stuart's gone on holiday." And it worked.
He didn't have a good game the other day either, but maybe we'll discuss that next week.
Oh, dearie me.
Let's not add fuel to the fire. We've run out of time. Keith, once again, many thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Sorry about the problems you had with your
no problem.
with your internet and so on. And we'll be back again next Monday, 8 o'clock, with more of the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Errol. Thanks.